Never before have we been faced with so many choices about how we should think, act, and live. How should we spend our time, our resources, and our money?
Blessed are the pure in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
How do we view ourselves and those around us?
Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted.
How can we find true success and lasting happiness?
Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the land.
How can we know what is right and true?
Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God.
How can we make sense of suffering and loss?
Blessed are they who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
And those of us who want to continue with Jesus need to choose Him and choose each other in a deeper way.
Welcome to the choices we face.
Welcome to the Choices We Face. I'm Peter Herbeck. I'm sitting in for Ralph Martin, who'll be back next week. And it's my delight to be able to introduce you to, or to reintroduce you again to, a good friend of Renewal Ministries and the Choices We Face, Jim Murphy. Welcome, Jim.
Hey, Peter. Good to see you, brother.
Yeah. Jim's got a word on his heart for us today about what I think is one of the central issues facing the church today. That is getting our hands again on the whole concept and meaning of what it means to be a disciple of Jesus and what's at the heart of it. And so I thought we could do, maybe you could just begin, Jim, by sharing your thoughts.
Sure. And
then we can talk about it after.
Yeah, there's a couple areas. I mean, my goodness, we could we could spend weeks on this topic alone. Sure. But you know, I think there's a lot of people playing Christian. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of people who kind of can banter the name around, and yet it's completely disconnected from life. Mm-hmm. And as I read the scriptures, and as I look at the teaching of Jesus, it wasn't this gray thing that everybody wants it to be. Yeah. You know, well, think happy thoughts, and that's good enough. Yeah. And there's several areas we could go, but there's three specific areas I'd like to focus on. Okay. One of the things that seems to me that a criteria for discipleship, a criteria for really following the Lord, is that what disciple means, to be a follower of the Lord? When we're talking disciple, is that the simplest definition? Yeah,
you might
I think it is. I think the bottom line is you're not just kind of standing back in the crowd watching Jesus do His thing. You're at His side. You're walking with Him. Where He goes, you go. Okay. What He endures, you endure. You're in, and you're in completely. And to me, that's one of the first earmarks of a disciple, a follower of the Lord, of a devout Christian, is there's a wholehearted surrender to God. Mm-hmm. God isn't something you do when it's convenient. He's not one of several activities. He's woven into the entire fabric of your life. Now, I realize that not everybody, because of their life circumstances or even their vocation, I'm not talking about drop everything you're doing and you know, go to the other side of the world and, you know, contemplate on a mountain kind of thing. Paul says, whatever you say, whatever you do, do it for the Lord. And to my thinking, the best definition I've ever heard of a saint is people who do ordinary things in extraordinary ways. So I'm talking about a wholeheartedness for the Lord. It's not so much in your vocation. It's whatever your circumstances are in, you do it all for the Lord. So people can't get off the hook by saying, well, you know, I'd like to follow God if I had more money, and I'd like to follow God if I didn't have these kids. I'd like to follow God if I didn't have this job. With the money, with the kids, with the job, follow the Lord. Yeah. And I found this great quote from St. John of the Cross, and boy, this to me says it all. The soul that journeys to God, but doesn't shake off its cares and quiet its appetite, is like someone who drags a cart uphill. And I was thinking, when Jesus says, you know, if you put your hands to the plow and keep looking back, you can't be my disciple. And at first it says, well, doesn't that sound exclusive? If you don't do it exactly right, you know, I'm not going to let you into my disciple club. It doesn't mean that. What it says, that if you really get to the heart of the wording, what it means is, if you put your hand to the plow and you keep looking back, when the tough times come, you're not going to be able to plow a straight course. It's not so much I'm going to exclude you, it's you won't have the ability to hang in there with me. You know, when the people asked Jesus, what's the most important commandment? He said, quoting the Old Testament, you shall love the Lord your God with your whole heart, your whole mind, your whole will, your whole strength. Jesus seems to think discipleship is the complete surrender of yourself to Him, as He completely surrendered Himself to the Father. So to say I'm a half-hearted Christian is an oxymoron. You can't be authentically Christian and be half-hearted. You're something else, but you're not a disciple as we're talking about it in this sense today. So it demands a complete and full surrender to the Lord. The second thing that I believe is an earmark of discipleship is obedience. My cousin has a magnet on her refrigerator, and it says, when all is said and done, a lot more is said than done.
Yeah.
You know, we can all talk a good line about, oh, I love God and He's nice and all this. The rubber meets the road when you have to obey what you don't feel like doing. And Jesus has a chilling end to His beautiful Sermon on the Mount. You know, the world says, oh, it's such beautiful poetry and it warms my heart, blessed are the poor. Do you know how He ends that sermon? Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom, but only those who do the will of my Father. Every person who hears my word and then doesn't act on it, they're like a foolish person who builds their house on sand.
Yeah.
The person who hears the word and acts on it, they build it on rock. Storms come to both men, but the man building on sand is destroyed. The man on rock is sustained.
Reminds me of that passage in James where it says, don't be hearers of the word only, but be doers and not hearers only.
Yeah.
He says, if you're hearer only and you're not doing it, you're deluding yourself, is essentially what the passage says. It says you've given yourself to some kind of delusion.
Yeah. You're
Christianity,
playing the
discipleship
game.
is doing, is following the
Yeah.
Master and how you're actually concretely living your life and making your decisions.
And the greatest depth of an illusion is we're so good at scamming everybody else, we start believing it.
Right,
That's when
right.
you're really in trouble.
Right.
You know, that's really a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
So this thing about obedience is, to me, the real acid test. Do you remember the story where Jesus gives a parable and He says, a man had 2 sons. He said to the boys, go out and work in the field. And the first son says, I'm not going to go work in no field.
Yeah.
And he goes off. The second son says, right away, Father. But the kid who's all enthusiastic, he never gets out to the field. The kid who said, no way, has a change of heart and goes off and actually does the work.
Right.
And Jesus ends by saying, which kid was faithful to the Father?
Yeah.
The one who does the work. In the Last Supper discourse, it says, if you love me, you will keep my commandments, and the Father will love you and will come and have dinner with you. It isn't like, well, I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
And let's be clear here. Obedience or disobedience, it isn't about, God hates all the people who aren't towing the line.
Right.
It's not that. It's that our disobedience, we're building a wall between ourselves and the love of God. We're pushing love away from us.
Yeah, that's very true.
It's not like God has a bad day and says, you spit on the sidewalk, I don't like you anymore. It's not that. It's this rebellion that opposes us against God.
Yeah.
The third criteria for discipleship, and frankly, as hard as the other two are, to me, this is the tough one. Trusting God. Now, I say that because I believe that the Lord will challenge us to walk a path that is often difficult. It's hard to stand up for your faith. It's hard to witness to somebody in a supermarket. It's hard to do the ethical thing at work when the easier thing would be, cheat a little bit. And so, let's be honest here. It's tough to follow the Lord. It's tough to be a disciple. And He said the night before He died, don't kid yourself. They hate me. What do you think they're going to do to you? So it comes down to a fundamental question of trust. He says, seek ye first the kingdom. Don't be worrying about what shall I eat, what shall I drink, etc., etc. Now I have to ask you the question: is He kidding, or is this true? Can you trust Jesus or can't you? Until every person answers that question, can I trust God or can't I? You'll never be able to wholeheartedly follow the Lord.
Well, you're going back to the primordial separation. You're right back to the garden. You're back to the temptation
That's
of the
right.
devil to say, no, wait a minute. Did he really say that?
Yeah.
And can he really be trusted? You know what?
Yeah.
I don't think he has your best interest in mind.
Yeah.
I think it's a little extreme. He's a little insecure. You're going to get more than you need. He doesn't want you to be too much like him, and he's keeping you down. All those lies essentially says God's plan, God cannot be trusted.
Right. And as Satan said, you better have a backup plan just in case God fails you. Eat this fruit so you can take care of yourself. And I believe that one of the effects of original sin is this need of we've got to take care of ourselves. You've got to look out for number one. If you don't take care of yourself, who will?
Yeah.
Or how about this line? God helps those who help themselves.
Where's that verse?
Yeah, right. Well, and there's
people think it's in the Bible, like that, you know.
And there's a little grain of truth there. I prefer to say God helps those who can't help themselves. And all of us are weak. None of us, we're kidding ourselves. He says, if you can't add a day onto your life, what else can't you do?
Yeah.
And he says, this comes down to, do not live in fear. Your Father wants to give you the kingdom. Seek ye first the kingdom of God. Ask, you shall receive. Seek, you shall find. Knock, it shall be open. And again, it comes this fundamental question. Is he right or is he wrong? If he's wrong, well, then let's all just pack up and go home, because this is the illusion. If God is right, you and I can follow him to the edge of the cliff, and if need be, we can jump.
Yeah.
Because God will take care of us.
Yeah, and this is what the apostles experienced, this transformation and this decision within themselves, when God testified to the truth of his Son's words through his resurrection from the dead. And, he silenced every other pretender, every other competing voice, everyone else who's looking to get you to trust them. And he said, this is the one through his death and resurrection from the dead and being born into a new life. When the apostles beheld the resurrected humanity of Jesus Christ, they saw their future. They saw that he was eternal. They began to grasp the whole thing, and that he's got it.
Yeah.
He's got the word. And as difficult as Calvary looks, as difficult as the narrow way looks, that's the only way.
And my fate is tied in with you.
Yeah.
If you fall, I fall. If you rise, I rise. Paul says that we've been baptized into the death and resurrection of Jesus. This is a package deal now.
Yeah.
And wherever the Lord goes, so shall we go. You remember when he said to Peter, everybody's getting pretty shaky because he just said, I'm the bread of life?
Yeah.
He turns the last few he's got, and they're pretty weak, and he says, do you want to go too? And Peter says, where else are we going to go?
Yeah.
This is tough, I'll grant you, but life would be unthinkable without you. There's this great line that Shakespeare once said. He said, a coward dies 1,000 deaths. A brave man dies but one. And people always think that the opposite of love is hate. The opposite of love is fear. And as long as we live in fear, we're never going to be able to risk for the Lord. And so we do die 1,000 times a day. I want to talk to so-and-so. Oh, they might not take it right. I want to do this, but what will they think? Every time we do that, we're yielding more to fear, and we're not letting the love of God rise within us.
Yeah.
So if a disciple is wholeheartedly committed to God, if they're obedient, and if they're doing their best to trust the Lord, then I'm not saying for a minute we're not going to fail. I'm not saying we're not going to make mistakes. Here's what I hope. I hope today we're walking with God a little bit closer than we did yesterday.
Yeah.
And I pray that tomorrow we'll walk closer with God than we are today. And if we'll just keep on the journey, we're going to make it.
Yeah, that's good stuff, Jim. I've got a couple of questions. I want to kind of bring it home, even continue to bring it home on a very practical level. We're going to take a little break. We'll be back in just a moment. Why don't you hang on, and we'll be back in just a minute. If you're searching for ways to grow in prayer and holiness and reading and sharing the good news, join us this summer at the Renewal Ministries Institute. Biblical scholars and lay missionaries join the Renewal Ministries staff to provide dynamic teachings on Scripture, evangelization, and the spirituality of the great saints. To find out more about the Renewal Ministries Institute, call 734-662-1730 today, or visit us on the web
at renewalministries.net.
Welcome back to The Choices We Face. We're here today with Jim Murphy, Jim Butch Murphy, one of our favorite guests, and we're talking about the important topic of discipleship. And Jim, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. The election the whole campaign election process that happened this past year, there were a lot of issues being debated in the Catholic community. You know, the whole gospel of life issues were really on the table. And we heard lots of Catholics stand up and say, you know, I'm a Catholic, but and I believe that life begins at conception, or I believe this and that, but I'm going to vote differently. Because I can't impose my faith on other people. And there was a duplicity there and a lack of clarity that just seems to be growing, in the Catholic community. To me, that's a problem with discipleship when I look at it.
I would absolutely agree with you. I think, and as I said this earlier, we play Christian. And sadly in our world, there is a disconnect between what we say we believe and how we live. Let me say that again. People think it's okay if I say the right things,
right.
It doesn't matter how I live. That is absolutely false. There has to be a connection between the way you talk, what you proclaim, and the way you live. That's where we get the word integrity from. Mm-hmm. Integral. It's a oneness.
Yeah.
You can't split. Well, I believe this, but I'm going to live this way. Man, you're a fractured being.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Yeah, I remember hearing a group of Northeastern Catholic college kids who were being interviewed back when the Holy Father John Paul II was at Toronto for World Youth Day a few years back. And, some went to Georgetown and Fordham and Boston College, places like that. And they were being interviewed. They were asked what they thought about John Paul II. And they said, well, we like him a lot, and we like his preferential treatment of the poor. We love his approach to the environment, but basically they went on to say he's wrong on so many other things. He's wrong on premarital sex, he's wrong on contraception, he's wrong on homosexuality, he's wrong on all these issues. And they saw no problem, and they were very confident. They came out and said, we're a new kind of Catholic. You know what I mean? Which is, I'm a picking and choosing kind of Catholic. Yeah. I'm a smorgasbord kind of Catholic. I'm a kind of person who creates, it goes right along with the philosophy in our country, but that everyone creates their own truth, everyone creates their own reality, and then they apply that secular worldview, they bring it into the world of discipleship and say, and I'm free to do it right here. I pick what I like, and I don't take what I don't want. And that's radically opposed to the call to discipleship that says, you want to follow me? Then die. Come and die.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, and speaking broadly about our whole culture, one of the things that people often talk about is, well, I got to follow my conscience, or I got to follow my heart, or it seems right to me. The church has always said, follow your conscience if your conscience is well formed.
Right.
But if your conscience is being formed by 30-minute sitcoms, if your conscience is being formed by porno sites on the computer, if your conscience is being formed by a whole bunch of worldly pagans around you, right. That's not the conscience that you want to follow. Yeah. And I also have to say, I don't think Jesus Christ says, follow me on your terms.
Exactly.
He's saying, I'm the Lord, remember?
That's it. Yeah.
I get to set the criteria, I get to call the shots, and frankly, you can walk with me or don't walk with me.
That's the choice.
But you're not going to walk with me on your terms.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if you don't like these issues, how are you going to do when you go on a cross?
Yeah.
If you don't, if you want to pick and choose and make this thing easy, I just can't grasp that everybody thinks Christianity has come to make us all comfortable and happy and safe.
Yeah.
Have you looked at Jesus?
Yeah.
Have you heard what the guy's talking about?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Jeez.
I mean, he was so clear in terms of his criteria of what it meant to follow him. He didn't want anybody to be confused about it.
Yeah.
He essentially said, this will cost you everything.
Yeah.
The things you're attached to, your reputation, your comfort, everything. Why? He says, if you're going to follow me, get ready, because the world is going to hate you. Let me say it again. It's going to hate you. None of us want the world to hate us. We all, you know what I mean? Our flesh, we want to be loved, respected, successful. We want to have our name in lights, all the rest of it. Jesus is saying, if you're going to follow me, it ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
The world is going to hate you because it hated me first.
And it's a compliment
Yeah.
if they do hate you, because it means you're being aligned closely enough with Christ that they see Christ in you.
Yeah, and then there's the passage from one of the epistles where it says, anyone who seeks to follow the Lord with seriousness, basically you're going to live a life of tribulation and difficulty because there are forces the Bible calls the world, the world and the flesh and the devil. Those are realities that we're living in the midst of.
Yeah.
And the one thing they're all conspiring to do is to silence the voice of Christ and the witnesses of his children, of his disciples.
A lot of that's through intimidation. And if you stand up for anything, you're a narrow-minded, intolerant bigot. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, as you said, nobody wants to be that.
Right.
So we tone it down and we get quiet and we get conservative, and all of a sudden this is between you and your God.
Yeah, right.
Well, I don't know what Jesus meant then when he said, go forth to the whole world, proclaim this gospel.
Yeah.
I don't know why thousands of people have died through the centuries to die for this faith. Why don't we all just tone it down? Why don't we just keep it quiet, keep our heads low?
Yeah.
That's not discipleship.
Yeah.
That's cowardice.
Yeah, following Jesus costs something.
Yeah.
Ultimately it costs everything. And it has to be willing. And what the world is trying to do is privatize everything. Privatize your faith to the point of irrelevance, to public irrelevance. You know what I mean? That just kind of squeeze it into your own kind of personal little world so it doesn't touch the public reality out there. So the public doesn't get challenged by anything, but at the same time it's tempting to buy it because then we don't have any cost. You know what I mean? Because it's in the public arena where we have to stand up and witness to the truth, not my truth or my feeling. I'm not imposing anything. I'm proposing to humanity. I'm proposing to my neighbor the truth as I understand it, that I'm willing to die for. Why? Because I want to impose? No, because I want to be faithful to the Master. I want to be faithful to the Lord who I have given my whole life to in surrender and obedience and trust. And I love you enough to bring the truth to you.
Yeah.
And if that means you're going to have to shoot me, shoot me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
and I think you're bringing another point here too, brother, and that is when we're talking about being honest and being truthful and stand up, we can be as kind as possible, and we don't have to be arrogant. We don't have to be browbeating people. But we do have to offer this, and we cannot compromise truth.
Yeah.
But I mean, don't offend people just because you've got some kind of an attitude. But if they're going to be offended because you're speaking truth, that's the price you pay.
Right. It's like when Jesus stood up, and the cloud, the devil's strategy was beginning to unfold, and the hour of darkness was coming. Peter said, don't go there, Jesus, don't go there. That's a temptation for all of us. Like, it's looking bad. It's looking like this is going to cost us, looking like it's going to hurt. Don't go there. Let's not do that. Let's think of some other way to do it. Well, it's going to come to the point, I feel like our culture is moving to the point where it's going to cost any serious disciple because there's so much unfolding in our public life together that impacts all of us that we have to stand up and speak out about.
Yeah.
We can't just sit back. We have to stand up and bear witness to the truth. And the apostles, I often imagine, they were ready to face whatever challenge came to them, no matter how big the crowd was that was opposed to them. No matter if someone came along and said, look at all these people of influence that are opposing you, Peter.
Yeah.
Look at all this stuff. Maybe you're not seeing it clearly. Or maybe we could work some other way out. If you just be quiet about this, we can figure out some way to do this and we can collaborate. And on certain issues, the apostles are saying no compromise.
Yeah.
You know what? I already have the majority, and it's him. He's it.
Yeah.
He's the only one with 20/20 vision. He's the only one that sees it all crystal clear. He is the truth. He is the truth.
Yeah.
And it comes from him. And I've been called as his disciple to bear witness to it at all costs.
When I was a little kid, you're always thinking about, was this a sin and was that a sin? And I always thought, someday I'll stand before God and answer for all the bad things that these things I should not have done and I did them.
Yeah.
And that's true. But as I get older, I'm more and more convinced I'll also be before the throne of God for all the opportunities, all the good things I could have done, all the times I could have spoke up, and I backed off.
Yeah.
This whole thing about
I hear you.
so many presentations we could have made,
Yeah.
friends, family, relatives, but we wanted to play it safe. They said, here's the one that cracks
don't
me up.
stir the waters. Don't cause it.
When you come for Christmas dinner, don't talk about Jesus. It's like, is that the stupidest thing you've ever heard
we
of?
can talk about Santa or anything else.
Yeah, don't talk about Jesus. Don't bring him up
he
at
might
Christmas.
upset anybody. And Jesus said, guess what, guys? if you're going to follow me, there's going to be a sword that's going to drop right down. And guess what? It may drop right down through your family.
Yeah.
That's
I've come to
part
light
of
a fire.
Yeah.
I didn't bring peace. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
hang on tight, folks, because I'm going places.
Yeah, and account this, be clear, he kept saying. This is an allegiance that has nothing else can interfere with. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This is the allegiance of your life now.
Yeah.
So assess that before you make a decision to follow me.
And you can be in allegiance as a garbage man, as a brain surgeon, as a mother, as a father, as a Boy Scout leader. But wherever you are, it's this total, completely sold out allegiance, not to a philosophy, not to a theory, to a person.
Absolutely.
Whose name is Jesus the Christ, the anointed of God.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the loyalty is to the person.
Yeah. What did St. Paul said? The life I now live, I live by faith in the Son of God.
Yeah.
My life is no longer my own. And that is so much what needs to get restored to the whole body. Yeah. That to say, I'm not really living for this world. I'm going to do whatever God calls me to do. I'm going to live my vocation to the hilt. I'm going to be a member of society. I'm going to do it. But really what makes me tick, what's at the core of my being, is a relationship with Jesus Christ, who I know is leading me to the truth and leading me to bear witness to the truth, like it says in Revelation at the end of all time. Those who were faithful, who was able to resist the final battle of the coming of the Antichrist? Those who did not love their lives, cling to their lives so much, but were willing to die and to give blood witness to the truth of the claims of Jesus Christ. And we could go on and on, Jim, but I've got to bring it to a close. Thank you so much for being here. It's a very, very important topic. And I want to encourage all of us to take seriously the words that were spoken here today and the call to radical discipleship. That's at the heart of the call to follow Jesus, is that radical abandonment in trust and obedience and surrender to Him. What I'd like to do as well is offer this booklet to you that Ralph wrote called What Happened When I Die? Having an eternal vision as a disciple is a very important thing. It helps free us. It helps us walk in the Lord more deeply. You can call the 800 number. You can write our website. But until next week, this is Peter Herbeck along with Jim Murphy, the whole Renewal Ministries family, Ralph, and the whole team wishing you the very best, that you yourself can experience the love of Jesus Christ, the personal call to discipleship that leads to a radical abandonment to Him.
Life is short, and the years fly by with increasing speed. Life is fragile, and the fate of all human flesh is death. At some point, we all ask, what happens when I die? Is there life after death? What will it be like? How does what I do in this life affect what happens when I die? My booklet provides some answers to these important questions by reflecting on what Scripture and the Church say about what happens when I die. To receive this free booklet, call Renewal Ministries at 1-800-282-4789 or visit us on the web at renewalministries.net.